Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm really thrilled to have you with us today.
And I'm your resident expert for the day. So glad you could tune in.
Yeah, because today our mission is to transform something we all universally dread, the grueling 14-hour economy flight.
Oh, it is brutal.
It really is. You know the exact feeling. You sit down, you buckle in, and it immediately hits you that this isn't just a flight. It feels like a hostage situation.
Right, or a 14-hour prison sentence.
Exactly. A prison sentence, only with considerably worse food. Sitting in economy for 10-plus hours is an ultimate test of your patience, your posture, and frankly, your will to live.
It really is an endurance event.
Yeah.
But our analytical angle for you today is that the difference between landing looking like a disaster survivor and arriving completely refreshed.
Which we all want.
Right, that difference is not a $5,000 business class ticket. It is entirely about anticipating the environmental stressors of that cabin and actively taking control of them. You really don't have to suffer just because you're in coach.
And to prove it, we've pulled together a really compelling stack of sources for this deep dive. We've synthesized hardcore travel survival protocols, insider tips straight from flight crews, and even some biological insights from physical therapists.
There's a lot of science to unpack here.
So much. We are promising you actionable secrets today, including a highly counterintuitive trick about picking aisle seats that we will reveal a little later on.
Oh, you are definitely going to want to hear that one.
For sure. Okay. Let's unpack this with our first line of defense. Seat selection.
The foundation of a good flight.
Right. Because the standard rookie move is just taking whatever seat the airline automatically assigns you at check-in.
Which is a huge mistake.
Huge. The pro move is taking control before you even pack your bags using tools like SeatGuru or Airlopa.
Those tools are your digital intelligence. For anyone who hasn't used them, these are websites where you type in your specific flight number and they provide a highly detailed color-coded floor plan of your exact airplane.
You're basically looking for the story of that aircraft.
Exactly. You want to target the green seats, which might have extra legroom because of a bulkhead, or maybe a consistently reliable power outlet.
And just as importantly, you're identifying the red seats to avoid them at all costs. Because not all economy seats are created equal. Some are, well, they're actual traps.
They really are. A red seat might have a broken recline mechanism.
Yeah.
Or a misaligned wall panel where you expect a window to be.
I hate that.
Or it might be situated right next to the noisy galleys and bathrooms. In a crucial piece of strategy here, check that map again 24 to 48 hours before your flight.
Why that specific window?
Because that is precisely when prime seats often open up. Frequent flyers are getting their complimentary upgrades to business class right around then.
Oh, leaving their highly desirable economy seats vacant.
Exactly. You can just swoop in and grab them.
I really like the idea of swooping in at the last second to grab a better spot. Now, speaking of where to sit, our sources highlight the back row strategy, and I have to pause here and push back on this.
Fair enough. It sounds crazy at first.
It does. Most people avoid the very back of the plane like the plague. Usually, the back row means your seat doesn't recline, you're hovering right next to a flushing toilet, and everyone is standing around you waiting in line. Why would our sources recommend that for a 14-hour flight?
It's a really fair point. And on a short domestic flight, you are entirely correct. You should avoid the back row.
Right.
But on a large, wide-body international aircraft, the geometry actually changes. The sources point out that on these specific planes, many back row seats actually do retain their full recline.
Oh, interesting.
And because they back up against a wall, it allows for completely guilt-free reclining. There's nobody behind you to sigh heavily or complain when you lean back.
Okay, that makes sense. No turf wars over knee space.
Exactly. Furthermore, because it's usually the absolute last section of the plane to fill up during the booking process, your odds of scoring an empty seat next to you skyrocket.
And having that empty adjacent seat changes the entire comfort level of your journey.
That extra shoulder room changes everything.
Yeah, it really does. So let's shift gears from where you sit to what you eat. There is a food strategy in the sources called the special meal hack.
This is a highly effective tactic. Up to 48 hours before your flight, you can log into your reservation and order a dietary-specific meal.
Like kosher, halal, vegetarian, vegan, or gluten-free.
Right. By simply making that selection, you guarantee that you get served first.
Which is a huge relief when you're starving at cruising altitude and the food cart is 20 rows away.
What's fascinating here is the systemic advantage it creates for your entire flight timeline. While the other 300 passengers are waiting for the heavy cart to slowly make its way down the aisle, you are already eating hot, fresh food.
And the sources say it's often better food, too.
It is. Often it's much better seasoned. Flight crews quietly note that the Hindu vegetarian option, for example, is usually fantastic because it relies on complex spices rather than just a heavy dose of sodium to create flavor.
And because you finish eating so early, you get a head start on the rest of the cabin.
Precisely. The aisles are still completely clear. You can get up, stretch, and use a clean bathroom long before the dreaded tray table trap locks the rest of the cabin into their seats for the next hour.
Getting pinned by that tray table while everyone else finishes their food is so frustrating.
It's the worst.
But honestly, even when the tray is up, people make themselves miserable by playing what I call overhead bin Tetris.
Oh, the aisle yoga.
Yes. Have you noticed how much time people spend doing aisle yoga? They shove their entire carry-on up in the overhead bin and then spend the next 10 hours constantly climbing over strangers to retrieve a charger, then a snack, then a lip balm.
It drives everyone around them crazy, and it's completely avoidable with the seat bag system.
Tell us about that.
The concept is to pack a small, soft pouch containing only your in-flight essentials. We're talking noise-canceling headphones, a charging cable, lip balm, a few snacks, and any necessary medication.
Just the bare minimum.
Right. You pull this pouch out before you board or right at your seat and tuck it directly under the seat in front of you.
It creates a little bubble of personal autonomy.
It does. You have everything within arm's reach without ever irritating your seatmates or needing to stand up. It lowers your stress and theirs.
Staying on the topic of things to keep at your seat, here's a piece of gear advice from the sources that feels really smart. Leave the trendy, collapsible plastic water bottle at home. Swap it for a wide-mouth insulated thermos like a 20-ounce Yeti or Stanley.
The logic behind the thermos is rock solid. First, it simply holds more water than those tiny plastic cups the flight attendants hand out, which keeps you hydrated.
And the lid completely prevents spills during unexpected turbulence.
Exactly. But the real upgrade is thermal control.
Right, because you can ask the flight attendant to fill it with hot water from the galley.
Yes. Now, instead of suffering through a sad packet of pretzels, you can make your own instant oatmeal, miso soup, or a proper hot cup of peppermint tea right at 30,000 feet.
That is amazing.
It provides a significant psychological comfort upgrade over a plastic cup of lukewarm water. It feels like a meal you actually chose.
I would take hot miso soup over a generic airplane roll any day. And while you are eating that soup, you probably want to watch something.
Naturally.
But holding your phone or tablet for 10 hours will destroy your neck. Our sources provided some DIY cinema hacks to fix this.
These are great.
Some people use a pop socket as a kickstand or even balance their phone on upside-down sunglasses. But the most effective one is taking a clear plastic Ziploc bag or even the air sickness bag located right there in the seat pocket, wedging it behind your phone case, and hooking it over the tray table latch.
It perfectly holds your screen at an ergonomic eye level without you having to grip it. It is remarkably effective.
You're a genius.
But of course, a DIY cinema is useless if your device dies. And this brings up a crucial warning from our sources regarding airline power outlets. They are notoriously unreliable.
Yeah, you really can't count on them.
Never assume your assigned seat will have a working outlet, even if SeatGuru said it would. You must always pack a portable power bank.
The sources specifically recommended a 20,000 milliamp hour power bank. For anyone wondering what that technical spec means, in plain English, a battery of that size can charge a standard smartphone about 4 to 5 full times. It gives you an enormous safety net.
It is absolutely essential. You should also bring both USB-A and USB-C cables to cover all your bases, depending on the aircraft's age.
Good call.
And a pro tip on charging. Top off your devices during the boarding process while the plane is still hooked up to ground power at the gate. In-seat power outlets very often cut out completely during taxi and takeoff while the engines are spooling up.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. All of this gear is great, but what is actually happening to your physical body when you are locked in that metal tube? The physical therapists in our sources gave a great piece of advice. Dress for a marathon, not an Instagram post.
The biology of flying is intense. And to understand it, we have to look at what cabin pressure actually is. Even though you are cruising at 35,000 feet, the aircraft's pressurization system keeps the cabin environment equivalent to standing on top of an 8,000-foot mountain.
Which is still pretty high up.
It is. At that lower atmospheric pressure, The trapped gases inside your body actually expand. This means your physical body can swell by up to 8%.
8%. That is wild.
Yeah, so that stylish, form-fitting outfit you wore to the airport, those tight jeans quickly become circulation-cutting traps once you reach cruising altitude.
That sounds miserable. So what should we wear instead?
The sources highly recommend wearing merino wool. It is a highly functional fabric for travel because it actively regulates the extreme temperature fluctuations of the cabin.
Keeping you warm when they blast the air conditioning and cool when the cabin gets stuffy.
Exactly. And it naturally resists odors.
We also need to talk about footwear. The sources stress the absolute necessity of compression socks. And they specifically note looking for 20 to 30 millimeters of mercury.
That measurement is key. We aren't talking about a snug pair of athletic socks here. That is a medical-grade squeeze specifically designed to force blood back up your leg against gravity.
So they are non-negotiable for long hauls.
Completely. Compression socks prevent deep vein thrombosis, or DVT, which is a very real risk when you are sitting immobile for 10 hours. They also stop your blood from pooling, preventing your ankles from swelling up painfully.
The size of grapefruits, as the sources put it.
Yes, and beyond circulation, they serve a secondary neurological purpose. The cabin floor is usually freezing, and keeping your feet warm actually tricks your central nervous system into feeling comfortable, helping your entire body relax.
Okay, what about the exhaustion factor? Sometimes you step off a plane feeling like you've been hit by a truck, even if you just sat there reading a book the whole time.
The sources call this cabin noise fatigue.
Right. The constant droning roar of the jet engines sits at around 85 decibels.
Which is loud enough that your brain is constantly trying to process and filter it out. It is a significant ambient energy drain. Your brain is burning glucose just to manage the auditory stress.
Wow, just from the sound.
Just the sound. This is why noise-canceling headphones or even properly inserted foam earplugs are not just for watching movies, they act as a biological shield. By cutting out that low-frequency rumble, they reduce your brain's auditory processing load by up to 60%.
60%.
Yes, they literally save you from landing feeling utterly depleted.
That is a wild statistic, saving 60% of your mental energy just by blocking the hum of the engine. So let's run through the rapid-fire internal wellness checklist to combat all these other environmental stressors.
Let's do it.
First, you need to limit salt intake, as it exacerbates that 8% bloating we talked about. You should also avoid the free alcohol.
That is a tough one for many travelers. But the science is clear. Alcohol is a diuretic, which speeds up dehydration.
And the altitude makes it worse.
Much worse. The lower oxygen levels in the cabin mean the alcohol hits your system twice as hard at altitude, and it completely disrupts your REM sleep cycle, ensuring any sleep you do get is poor quality.
Instead, the protocol is to hydrate with about 8 ounces of water every 60 to 90 minutes, ideally mixing in some electrolytes.
And we should add the physical therapist's active recovery note. Because your blood circulation drops by roughly 40% when sitting for that long, you need to do subtle in-seat exercises every 3 hours.
Like ankle rolls and calf pumps.
Exactly. Simple movements like seated twists are practically invisible to your seatmates, but are highly effective at keeping your blood flowing and preventing muscular stiffness.
All right, let's tackle the ultimate boss fight of economy class, sleeping.
The hardest part.
A lot of the sources have real disdain for those standard U-shaped neck pillows everyone buys at the airport terminal kiosks. They recommend a few unconventional alternatives. First, if you do have a U-shaped pillow, turn it backwards so the opening is at the back of your neck.
It supports your chin and stops that awful head bobbing motion that keeps waking you up. That is a much better structural use of the pillow.
Other travelers suggest taking the free airline blanket and rolling it up tight to wedge behind your lower back for custom lumbar support.
Very smart.
One frequent flyer even suggested bringing a deflated beach ball, inflating it just a little bit, and using it as a highly adjustable, lightweight footrest under the seat in front of you to elevate your knees.
That beach ball trick is incredibly clever for improving leg circulation. But if you do manage to fall asleep using these methods, the worst thing that can happen is being jolted awake by a flight attendant during turbulence.
Oh, that is incredibly frustrating.
This brings us to the seatbelt over the blanket rule. Flight attendants are required by law to visually check seatbelts when the turbulence sign illuminates, and they end up waking up roughly 70% of sleeping passengers to do so.
So keeping your buckle visibly clasped on top of your blanket or jacket prevents this interruption completely.
It's such a simple fix.
The sources also mention that if you plan to sleep right through a meal service, you should lower your tray table beforehand. It ensures the crew can silently drop off your food without tapping you on the shoulder to ask if you want to eat.
Exactly. It is about communicating your preferences without needing to be awake.
Now, moving from physical comfort to mental survival, there is an interesting psychological trick from the sources called the tax rule.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the tax rule is a masterclass in cognitive reframing.
How does it work?
The rule dictates that you save a highly anticipated TV show, a new podcast series, or a specific guilty pleasure snack exclusively for the flight. You strictly withhold this reward from yourself on the ground.
It's like a bribe for yourself.
Essentially,
Right.
by doing this, you actively rewire your brain's dopamine response. You begin to associate the cramped, restrictive environment of the economy class cabin with access to a highly anticipated treat. You are shifting the anticipation of the flight from a sense of dread to a sense of genuine excitement.
I really like the idea of turning a 14-hour flight into my own personal exclusive movie premiere with premium snacks I normally wouldn't buy. It changes the whole narrative.
It absolutely does.
Okay, we have arrived at the reveal we promised about seat selection. Tip 14. A lot of people assume the outer aisle seats, the ones on the far left or right of the plane by the windows, are the best choice for long hauls because you only have one person next to you. But according to the sources, they are a trap.
They are a trap because of the traffic flow. Here is the middle block aisle secret. On large, wide-body planes that have a 3-4, 3-seat layout, your best move is booking an aisle seat in that center block of 4.
Okay, let's break down the math on that.
If you are sitting on the outer aisle, the person sitting in the window or middle seat next to you has exactly one way out to use the restroom, climbing directly over you.
Right.
But if you are in the center block aisle, the person sitting in the middle seat next to you actually has 2 escape routes. They can exit to their left or to their right. Statistically, this cuts the chances of them choosing your side and climbing over you by 50%.
That is brilliant.
It is a subtle shift in positioning that drastically protects your uninterrupted sleep time.
50% fewer interruptions just by picking the inner aisle instead of the outer aisle. That is a game changer. Now, as we enter the final hours of the flight, we have to talk about jet lag and physical dehydration. The cabin air sits at around 12% humidity. To put that in perspective, that is drier than the Sahara Desert.
The reason for that extreme dryness is the altitude. At 35,000 feet, the outside air is well below freezing and contains almost zero moisture. When that air is pulled into the engines, compressed, and pumped into the cabin for you to breathe, it is bone dry.
This is why the sources share the nasal balm trick. You take a cotton swab with some thick ointment or balm and swab the inside of your nostrils. It sounds a little strange, but it directly combats that extreme environmental dryness, protects your mucous membranes, and prevents those awful in-flight nosebleeds that can happen on long routes.
It is a very practical defense mechanism. And to protect your circadian rhythm from the time zone shift, you need to implement the 48-hour reset.
What's the protocol there?
The core principle here is not to wait until you land to fight jet lag. Change your phone and your watch to the destination time zone the very moment you board the aircraft. From that second on, force yourself to eat and either sleep or stay awake, according to that new clock. You are giving your biological systems a significant head start on adjusting to the new environment.
And to make sure you actually look and feel adjusted when you finally step off the plane, we have the 60-minute refresh kit. About an hour before landing, right when the final meal trays are cleared, but before the seatbelt sign comes on for the initial descent, the aisles are usually empty.
That's your window.
Hit the bathroom then. Bring your little kit to brush your teeth, use some hydrating face wipes, apply deodorant, and importantly, change your shirt and your underwear. You will step off the plane feeling like a new person, rather than someone who just survived an endurance event.
It makes a world of difference.
So what does this all mean? The core philosophy we've pulled from all these sources is this. Surviving a long-haul economy flight isn't just about grinning and bearing the physical discomfort. It is entirely about treating the cabin like an environment you can engineer. Through smart preparation, understanding your biology, and using a little psychological trickery, you dictate the terms of your journey.
It really is an exercise in intentionality. And I want to leave you with a thought that builds on that psychological trickery we discussed. If the tax rule can successfully trick your brain into actually looking forward to 14 hours crammed in a metal tube just by withholding a favorite TV show, what other miserable, unavoidable grinds in your daily life could you completely re-engineer just by restricting your favorite guilty pleasures until you're forced to do them?
That is such a fascinating way to look at it. Commutes, doing the dishes, filing expense reports, the possibilities really are endless. Well, next time you are staring down a massive long-haul itinerary, try putting these experiments to the test. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.